Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. Valve has finished adding all 6 of the brand new heroes to Deadlock, and in this video I want to cover a bunch of ways that you can counter every single one of these characters. If I miss any tips, then feel free to leave them in the comments section down below, but let's get started by talking about Mina, who is the first hero that they added. So in my opinion, Mina is a somewhat straightforward hero to counter because she is a glass cannon who is highly dependent on her movement ability to stay alive by blocking attacks. She is completely untargetable during this dash phase, and so you can actually use slowing hacks in order to completely counter that. If you have some big telegraphed attacks that you know she's going to try and dodge with her Sanguine Retreat, then you can use slowing hacks on her and she will be incapable of dodging those attacks without investing twice as much money as you did to buy a debuff remover. So this is a very helpful item against Mina, and she is very, very squishy. As you can see, she has the lowest health pool in the entire freaking game. So yeah, you can absolutely burst her down with a lot of characters using a slowing hex and then just slamming her with your attacks. And you can also, if you're looking to survive her damage, you can pick up some spirit damage reduction of any kind. Spirit Resil is the most common thing you can buy, because she does do a lot of spirit damage. Her gun damage in particular isn't actually very high without the additional damage from Love Bites. This does spirit damage on all of her attacks, and it also builds up to this burst that you see here. So Spirit Resil, very important against that, and also her Rake does pretty big damage, and so does her ultimate. So Spirit Resil just counters all of that. And fire rate reduction can also be your friend because it slows her down from being able to apply her burst as easily. Finally, you should consider picking up some extra stamina or mobility in general, especially stuff that doesn't get silenced, because, well, two reasons. First of all, they just changed her Love Bites at tier 3 to remove 1 stamina from your character when it procs. So if you have extra stamina in the tank, this won't hurt you as much. So extra stamina, stamina mastery, kinetic dash, anything like that will be helpful there. But also her ultimate is very powerful because it silences you on hit, and it does a lot of damage when you upgrade it. So you'll want to be able to get behind cover as quickly as you can, and if you anticipate that she's going to ult, try playing around cover from the get-go as you engage her, and then if she ults, you can just pop behind a wall and escape her that way. And this is even more pertinent if you're dependent on your movement abilities or your abilities just in general to survive and deal damage. Also, because her health is so low in general, stuff like Tank Buster and Toxic Bullets won't be doing nearly as much damage to her as they will to someone like Abrams, so if you have her and a bunch of other squishy heroes on the enemy team, maybe consider going for something else instead. You might get more damage out of it. Next, let's take a look at Billy, who is a high-octane, up-close, and personal melee character with some powerful abilities and some powerful spirit damage. So, because he's a melee character, your first thought should obviously be to get a rebuttal, especially if Billy is paired with any other melee heroes on the team, like an Abrams. This is very cheap, and it cuts the parry cooldown in half, allowing you to parry him much more consistently, and if he is the type who is meleeing a lot, then rebuttal can be very helpful. And you also have to know when you can parry. There are a few telegraphed moments where a Billy might try to weave in a light melee or a heavy melee. One such time is after Rising Ram. You might see him Rising Ram, light melee you, and then use his attack like that. And so if you parry him after the Rising Ram, you have a chance of actually stunning him and getting away from him. And even if that doesn't work, obviously, because you bought rebuttal, you'll be able to do it again in 2 seconds anyways, and so maybe you'll goad him into trying to hit you with a heavy melee a couple seconds later and getting stunned. The second opportunity you have to try and parry him is right when he's about to pull you with his chain here. He's going to wind up a heavy melee and slap you like that, and so if you parry him as he's pulling you in, you might be able to get a stun on him that way. You'll also want to try and break line of sight with the chain, because that is going to stop him from pulling you just like that, although you have to break line of sight for more than like a second. Because, like, if I do this right here, yeah, I was out of line of sight as Billy here, but I still pulled this test dummy in. So you want to make sure you get behind cover as quickly as you can and get away from the Billy. And in general, getting away from Billy is a very good thing. He's a very close quarters hero, so you want to make sure you buy some movement abilities or use your own movement abilities to escape him. Counterspell is also an incredible item because he does have pretty telegraphed attacks. The Rising Ram both plays a noise when it's charging up and also has this charge up animation, so you can counterspell that. And this does really big spirit damage too, so you'll want to try and avoid this if possible. usable, especially if you're playing someone who has a high health pool. And the bash down is pretty similar. You can also counterspell this. It won't stun him, even though it does do melee damage, because it is an ability. So you can't parry this normally, but you can parry it with counterspell, and at the very least you will block the damage from this. So it can be good to buy counterspell against this guy for multiple of his attacks. Finally, you can always just try and crowd control him. Now, slowing Hex might seem pretty good because it does block the Rising Ram. However, unfortunately, it does not block the bash down, even though it might seem kind of like a movement ability, because you have like this dash down component thing to it, but it's not a movement ability. So instead, you might want to consider silencing him to block both of these abilities, because, yeah, when he's silenced, he can't exactly do anything to you. And of course, if you just need to buy some resistances against him, Spirit Resilience is absolutely fantastic. His abilities have a very powerful spirit damage component, and if you can naturally fit some melee resist into your build, let's say you're a Torment Pulse buyer, for example, then that can be good too. Not every character can take advantage of that though, but it is important to remember that melee damage can also partially be countered by bullet damage reduction as well, so yeah, maybe consider that too. Now before we move on to the Doorman, I just want to remind you that if you've been enjoying my content recently and you found this video to be helpful so far, then make sure that you like the video down below and also subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content from me. I would really appreciate it. It helps me out a ton, and it helps you stay up to date on all my latest videos as well, so yeah, please subscribe. But yeah, let's talk about the Doorman now. Doorman is a very tricky hero to counter because he's such a unique hero, and yeah, he has some very powerful abilities. One thing that's very effective about the Doorman is that he is able to escape a lot of situations. He has multiple displacement and movement tools. The doorway is obviously a portal gun, so he can just go in there, cancel the portal behind him, and run away. He can also send you away with the luggage cart here, and he can send you to another plane of existence with the hotel guest. So he has a lot of tools to try and, yeah, just get you away from him. Chasing him can be very difficult, especially if you're in a one-on-one engagement and his focus is entirely on you. So you want to be careful not to overextend on the Doorman, especially because he can potentially lead you into an ambush, right? Let's say he puts a portal down trying to escape, you chase him through the portal, he closes the portal behind you, and then his teammates come and clobber you. So you got to be very, very careful about chasing Doorman through his portals, and don't get greedy against this character. And if you plan on getting up close with Doorman like this Haze did, we are really low on souls. I've been so... Go away. Then, make sure you silence the Doorman beforehand. Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna kind of just get embarrassed like that, because he can very easily just push you away and even stun you out of your abilities with the luggage cart. Yeah, silencing him when you go to engage on him is fantastic, and also getting some debuff resist can be helpful for his stun if you find that he's hitting you with that consistently and maxing it out. It is a very long stun. They nerfed it from 1.5 seconds to 1.2 seconds, but that is still very long, and he can still buy superior duration for that, and all of a sudden now it's back up to a 1.5 second stun. So it's pretty evil, and yeah, debuff resist goes a long way if you're playing someone who engages in close quarters frequently. So something you might not have known is that you can actually escape Doorman's ultimate super easily with some heroes, and also with the item counter spell. So let me make this guy a puppet real quick, have him ult me, clear the follow, and we can actually just whee! And take absolutely no damage if we're in the cube, so if you have an ability like that, you can absolutely use that to get out of the Baroness as quickly as possible. And also, if you're playing Dynamo and you're struggling to get out in time, you can use Quantum Entanglement when it's about to force you out, and it will stop you from taking the damage. We can also use Counterspell very similarly to the cube if we go ahead and ult here, clear the follow, and whee! Yeah, we can counterspell it and get out in a matter of moments and take absolutely no damage, mitigating the effect of Doorman's ult pretty drastically. Finally, let's talk about Doorman's early game. Doorman is one of the scariest laners in the game because he does so much damage with the Call Bell if he builds for Spirit. We have Extra Charge, Mystic Burst, Enchanters for a little bit of survivability and extra Spirit power, and then Quicksilver Reload for a big burst of bonus damage, and we have Call Bell upgraded to tier 2 real quick. So this adds 30 impact damage and 50 explosion damage, and for just about 5k worth of souls, yeah, we could do almost 400 damage, and that is a third to half of your character's health in the early game. So you want to be very, very careful around this guy. And you can also buy some early items to mitigate the effect of this Call Bell. You can get extra health, you can get Spirit Shielding, and both of those will give you a lot of extra hit points to try and tank this Call Bell in the early lane. Countering a good Doorman does take a lot of brain power, especially when it comes to the portal, but that is kind of just the nature of this character. He requires requires a lot of brain power to play, and he requires a lot of brain power to counter a person with good brain power playing him. Oh boy. Now, Paige is probably the most conventional hero to counter here because she is a support, and a lot of her abilities just kind of require some common sense to escape. The captivating read here can be tricky, especially if she is a vortex web user. You want to make sure that you have some kind of movement ability to escape this, whether it's just being really fast with a lot of movement speed, having stamina to get out, using something like Warp Stone to escape it. All of those are pretty good options, and if you find that you're getting rooted consistently, then Debuff Remover will remove that in a blink. Rallying Charge will also stun you and deal a decent bit of spirit damage, and in general, if she is doing a lot of damage to you for some reason, then Spirit Resil obviously will help with that, but really just some debuff resist also goes a long way. You can debuff resist the Rallying Charge and get stunned for less time, and also if she puts the barrier on someone, especially a gun hero, you want to try and get that barrier off of them as quickly as you can using whatever burst damage you have, because while the barrier is active, they will get bonus weapon damage and fire rate, but if the barrier is down, then they don't get that buff anymore. So you can really stop her from empowering her haze or whoever she puts the barrier on just by focusing them and putting a bunch of damage into them all at once. Anti-heal will not stop the barrier from being fully effective when it comes to its health, so you really do just need a lot of damage for that, but anti-heal can still be good against Paige because of her ultimate, and also if she is someone who buys Rescue Beam or Healing Nova, or both, because these can be very powerful sources of healing, and Healbane shuts that down. And if she's a gun Paige weirdo, then just, buy some anti-gun items for her, buy Bullet Resil, buy anti-fire rate options, and just counter her like you would any other gun hero. Drifter is a very spooky hero, and the most important tip for him is that you never want to 1v1 him unless you know you're going to win because you have a distinct lead over him. And that's because of his Blood Scent passive here, which causes him to do 15% amplified damage against isolated heroes. And also, if he kills you, then he's going to start snowballing, because when he kills an isolated hero, he gets permanent 5% extra weapon damage, and that'll stack up over the course of a match. So, you want to make sure that you're traveling in pairs, if at all possible. Make sure that he is not able to make use out of his Blood Scent passive. And if you can't stick together with your team, if you have to go somewhere alone, then make sure that you're not playing too aggressively, so that way you're not out of position and he can't take advantage of that and kill you. He can also be very tough to deal with, because with a build like this, he does high amounts of all three damage types. He does melee damage, he does a big burst of spirit damage, and he is also capable of doing a good amount of gun damage, especially when he has scaled up his Blood Scent. So, yeah, what can you do to counter all that? Well, the primary source of his damage is still going to be spirit damage mostly. As you can see from this outgoing breakdown here, we get a lot of damage from the Stalker's Mark, we get a good amount of damage from our Blood Scent, amplifying all of our spirit and gun damage, a good amount of damage from Mercurial Magnum, and also Rend is majority spirit damage. So, spirit damage reduction should be your first priority, and also you can buy Counterspell against this guy, and it will block the Rend. And since Rend is a telegraphed attack like this, you can see him rake back his claws like this, ready to slash you. Yeah, you can counterspell that. And you also want to anticipate him teleporting behind you, especially if you have this mark on you. And if you're anticipating that, you can be like, oh, alright, I'm waiting. Okay, he does teleport to me, and then when you notice that he teleports to you, if your reactions are fast enough, you can counterspell and block that Rend pretty consistently. If he is playing a more gun-focused build, without Mercurial Magnum and more emphasis on gun items, then gun damage reduction does all of a sudden become more of a priority, especially because bullet damage reduction will also reduce the damage that he does with the melee component of Rend, and so just pay attention to the Drifter's build and counter him based on what he's buying. But regardless, if he's a Merc Mag user or a gun item user, reducing his fire rate will be very helpful, and also you want to try and put as much of a distance between you and Drifter as you can, because he does actually have a decent follow-up, and also at a certain point his weapon just stops working, like this. So try and outrange him if you can. And you can also try and use Slowing Hex if you want to prevent him from teleporting to you, although this can be a little finicky, and Slowing Hex lasts for less of a length of time than the Stalker's Mark, so I don't think it's too good of a counter against him, but it does technically work. You cannot, however, use Debuff Remover to stop him from teleporting to you. Debuff Remover will remove the damage over time from Stalker's Mark, but it will not prevent him from teleporting. He does also tend to be on the tankier side when it comes to his raw hit points, and so you can also use percent damage against him, kind of like you would would against an Abrams. But really, again, the most important thing is to just not get isolated and group up on this guy whenever you see him, because he does much worse in a group fight, and he will not be able to take advantage of one of his abilities just at all. Finally, let's talk about Victor, the newest and most broken of the 6 heroes. So broken, in fact, he had to be hard nerfed 3 hours after his release, and he's still in a pretty strong state right now, and that's because of this damage aura and the fact that he is incentivized to build for a whole lot of spirit damage reduction. So his whole game loop really just involves him being really tanky, getting a lot of healing, especially from his second ability, from lifesteal sources, from infusers, stuff like that, and just getting in your face and doing monstrous amounts of damage with this aura of suffering. It does self-damage, but it also rewards him by doing a ton of damage to other people if he's able to sustain this damage. So, yeah, I mean, as you can see, this guy's just always taking a ridiculous amount of damage. So how the heck do you counter this character? Well, there are several things. First of all, you need to social distance from this guy like you see a sick person in 2020. You need to get the heck away from him, because without his damage aura like this, he is much, much less of a threat. And so do whatever you have to get away from him. Whether it's using a movement ability, stamina, movement speed, displacement tools, crowd control to keep him away from you, all of that, whatever it takes to keep you out of this damage aura. And if you're out of this damage aura, suddenly he's a lot easier to deal with. That is the biggest priority. The second thing you'll want is some anti-heal, and Healbane is definitely the easiest anti-heal option to apply to him if you have spirit damage over time. And the reason why it's important that you're able to apply Healbane consistently is because he's able to cleanse debuffs with the tier 3 jumpstart. This is basically a free debuff remover, and with rapid recharge, it has multiple charges. So yeah, he can cleanse Healbane, and then he can cleanse Healbane again, and then he can cleanse Healbane again. So you need to be able to reapply it with someone like Seven, who is able to do spirit damage consistently. It's much less consistent to apply the anti-heal if you are someone like Lash and you only have a handful of abilities. So do bear that in mind. Toxic Bullets can also be pretty good. Really, the one thing that kind of sucks against him is Spirit Burn, which is kind of ironic because it is the highest amount of healing reduction and thus would be the best against him, but it has a 20-second cooldown and he can cleanse it with the Jumpstart just like Healbane. So if he gets Spirit Burn applied to him, he cleanses it immediately and then just goes right back to healing. And it's also insanely difficult to apply Spirit Burn in the first place because he stacks so much spirit damage reduction. Right now I've got about 32k, my build is basically complete, and I'm rocking 52% spirit damage reduction before I pop Scourge, and now with Scourge I have 71% spirit damage reduction. So that's pretty insane. That's a lot. And I'm not even below 30% health yet, where I would be able to take advantage of the plus 30% that Spirit Resilience provides. So yeah, it's just insanely difficult to actually apply Spirit Burn to this character, and then it's just going to get cleansed instantly. So you're much better off with Healbane or Toxic Bullets, although Toxic Bullets kind of falls into the same issue where it takes longer to reapply than Healbane, and also it does spirit damage, and then that spirit damage is just going to be mitigated by his ludicrous levels of spirit damage reduction that he needs to maintain Aura of Suffering like I'm doing right now. And we could just pop Infuser and heal all that back up, oh my god! So, yeah, the second thing you need against this guy is any form of stealing spirit damage reduction, whether that is Mystic Vulnerability and Cascading Exposure if you are playing someone like Seven who has DOT, or maybe something like Spirit Snatch, which is actually the best source of spirit resist steal in the game, I'm pretty sure, 15% spirit resist steal, although it does require you to get in range of his aura to actually apply that, so, I mean, if you're naturally building for it, go for it, but otherwise it's a little risky. But yeah, stealing his Spirit Resist, even just a little bit, will still make him take a lot more self-damage, and together with the anti-heal that you apply to him, he will not be able to sustain the Aura of Suffering nearly as consistently. The Aura of Suffering does tend to generally be the biggest source of damage that he takes in a fight if he is actively channeling it a lot to try and kill you, and so making him take more damage from that is key. However, building Spirit against this guy just isn't really the right approach in general. Some characters are kind of forced to build Spirit. You know, if you're playing Seven, you just build Spirit anyways, and you just have to kind of cope with the fact that this guy is going to be tanking most of your damage. But if you have the option to play a gun build against Victor, it's going to be so much more effective, because you know he's going to be building a million spirit damage reduction just for his ability alone, not even necessarily for the rest of your team, although it is helpful against the rest of your team too. And to do that, he often neglects bullet resilience and any other form of bullet damage reduction. He can still buy it, but he doesn't have nearly enough space in the build for it as he does for all of his spirit damage reduction. And bullet damage reduction is a lot easier to counter than spirit damage reduction. The sources of anti-bullet resist just scale higher. You have weakening headshot at 12%, upgrades into crippling headshot at 18%, hollow point with minus 12%, hunter's aura with minus 8% times 3 if you're alone, although that's really risky to use against him. Even bullet resist shredder, the counterpart to Mystic Vuln, scales up to 13%, so it's much easier to deal with his bullet damage reduction than it is his spirit damage reduction, and you can just shred him with a gun build, and that'll be definitely the best way to try and put this man down. We're still going, by the way. I have not stopped channeling this. Oh gosh. Sometimes, though, you'll see a clip like this, where Victor just goes full Unga Bunga against your team. I've got my ultimate, though. I'm just gonna let them kill me. Parried them both! There's one dead. Cold front. Alright. Bada bing, bada boom. We're back. Oh, I get instantly stunned. Oh, no. We got the walker, though! We got the walker! Who has the last laugh? It's me, not you! He just suicide charges an objective, uses his ultimate and his Aura of Suffering, tanks a million damage, and gets the objective anyways. How do you stop him from doing that? Well, the answer is as much crowd control as you can physically put on this guy. Especially hard CC that can't be cleansed by Jumpstart. So, you know, like Knockdown can be cleansed with Jumpstart before the stun actually hits him. That wouldn't be very good. But stuff like silences, and especially any characters with displacement, like a Lash ult or a Dynamo ult, are going to be incredible. You're just going to be able to force him away from your Walker where you can kill him and he'll revive in a position that won't damage your objective, whether it's your Patron or your Walker or your Guardians. So that is very, very key against this character as well, and it kind of harkens back to my point earlier about social distancing. Just keep him away from you and anything you care about. Stay away from this man. Oh my goodness. So yeah, there is a lot of counterplay to Victor. You just got to be very diligent about making sure that you stay away from him and countering him accordingly, picking the right items. He is still probably a little overtuned, but I think as people adapt to his playstyle more, he will become much easier to deal with. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you guys have enjoyed, then of course make sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe for more content from me. And watch as my health actively goes up now that I've popped Scourge. Just the lifesteal and the damage. This character is silly. I really enjoy this character, even if he is a little strong. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.